had talked earlier, you and I, about love sort of being equal to awareness or as having an awareness. So I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about how you go about your daily life with integrating love and your daily life.
Okay. So, in the morning, one might wake up and initially find one's head flooded with the agenda of the day. I got to go do this. I got to have a conversation with so-and-so, as well as maybe some of the more quotidian components of, well, now I've got to get up and use the bathroom and then brush my teeth and things like that. So love, the act of love, if I were to define it in terms of awareness, you can think of love as sort of the act of moving towards something and bringing a kind of closeness and intimacy to the observation of what might initially been done unconsciously, like washing the dishes or taking a shower, the elimination of going to the bathroom in the morning. If you were practicing this kind of loving awareness, when you're engaging in any particular activity, there's always this kind of checking back in to notice where you may have kind of lost presence, where you may have gotten wrapped up in your story and sort of left your body or left the moment. So it doesn't mean that there won't be 1,000 times a day that you do this, because you're going to forget. You're going to kind of get up in your head, or you might have an emotional experience that seems to kind of draw you into it, and you forget very often that there is a tremendous benefit to just sitting and watching for a moment. So the act of love is embodied when we bring attention to some part of our experience in a way that seeks deeper intimacy with it, rather than kind of pulling back. And you could do this all day long. You could do this when watching TV. And TV's almost the antithesis of yoga because it's directing your attention. Your attention is getting kind of sucked out of you and drawn into this glowing little box. But you could, theoretically, in watching a show and digesting the narrative, come back and just kind of notice how a particular scene or an experience is making you feel. You could notice how you're sitting on the couch. You could, when you're driving, be in that constant state of self-reference while still obeying all the, traffic rules and using your turn signal and being attentive to the other drivers on the road, to be constantly coming back to the palace, so to speak. It's essentially how I interpret the story of the prodigal son from the Bible. There's this kind of young man who strikes off into the world to experience worldly pleasures, and he squanders his inheritance, and then he comes back home, and it's in the coming home that the story sort of wraps up in a kind of sweetness. It's one thing to just kind of, be born into an awakened state, but it's another thing to kind of go out, to forget the essence of who you are, and to undertake that slow, sometimes a quick process. Most of the time it's slow and gradual, but for all of us, it's more or less inevitable that we're going to come back to a sort of remembering of who we are at a very innocent and fundamental level.
But as you go about your day like that, it sounds to me like, in a way, having to be aware of, how loving am I being, or where am I in this awareness? It's almost like having to hold your breath and be constantly aware of yourself and what you're doing and what you're setting out there. And rather than becoming involved in a more natural way with the situation or with the person that you're with. It's sort of hard to be in both shoes at the same time. Do you see what I'm saying? If we're having to be aware of our of love, it seems, like I said, like almost like holding your breath. You have to stand here and be very observant.
It's a dance. It's a dance. It's been said that at the heart of every sort of spiritual arrival or awakening, one recognizes a kind of fundamental paradox about the nature of existence. That we're not, yes, we are individuals, but at the same time, we're part of community. And we have to sort of hold both of those qualities in our being. We can't just be all about community, otherwise we'll deplete ourselves trying to serve other people. We can't just be about individualism, otherwise we're just kind of selfish and narcissistic. So we have to kind of engage in this dance. We very often, as we start to get a taste of our spiritual awakening, we begin to sort of apply judgment to moments where we're probably being very fully human, but in our minds, it seems like, oh, that's not what an awakening person does. This is not what an enlightened person does. So they don't get angry. And that's, I would say, a kind of fundamental New Age myth that to be awakened means to just be in a world of bliss and pleasant feelings and a good mood and gratitude all the time. I dare say that that's not very realistic. I think Chogyam Trungpa had a great line. I think I shared this with you the other day. He said, when you can hold the pain and sadness of samsara in your heart, and you can think of samsara as kind of the quality of the human condition marked by sort of separation from the divine. But when you can hold the pain and sadness of samsara in your heart, and at the same time, the power and vision of the great Eastern Sun, then the warrior can make a proper cup of tea. And he was speaking about this kind of paradox where you are in tune with the goodness of the world, but at the same time, your heart is very open and receptive to the brokenness. How does one do both? I think you don't even have to ask that question because you will be called to do both, and you will begin to discern ways that you naturally do this. If we were not enlightened, someone once said, I don't know where I heard this, but someone once said, if we were not enlightened to begin with, we would go mad from all our problems. But we're able to kind of come back to this resourced state that knows, even if we don't really see the full way out, that there is a better way to be than just kind of wallowing in our own misery because we lost our job or we've been afflicted with a disease or someone broke up with us or we're getting a divorce or any number of calamities that might befall a person that makes them kind of go, it's not safe to be human. It's not safe to be here. But if we fully subscribe to that idea, we would probably be kind of catatonic, and we would just curl up in a corner in a fetal position at the utter pain of our human condition. But we are intrinsically, I think, imbued with that recognition of being connected, of being lovingly held in the arms of the universe. And regardless of what one's theology is about God and what God means, I think on a very fundamental level, there is a human recognition that there is an undercurrent of good and loving kindness that sort of hovers in the world around us, and that we are connected to it.
So what are some of the things that bring that to mind for you? I mean, because I'm thinking of a few things that perhaps we sort of underestimate or deny, or something like, for example, synchronicity or intuition. But what comes to mind for you when you think of things that do indicate to us that we are perhaps enlightened, but don't really know it, or that there is a good universe that we are being held in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, things that might remind you. I think,
Or you and what
I'll
in
tell
your
you,
life, yeah.
in my life, I think it's a given probably for most people. Music is one of them. I
Mm-hmm.
think, regardless of what music you're listening to, there's a kind of affirmation that humanity does produce something beautiful. There are any number of things that one can look at in the world that I think when we look at humanity, very often people kind of lapse into a sort of cynicism, and all they can see is, thousands of years of human on human injustice,
Mm-hmm.
humans creating suffering for other humans, humans caught up in their own pettiness. So it sometimes we forget the kind of intrinsic beauty that is the human species. But things like art and music can give us great reminders that we are agents for creating beauty in the world. Nature is a great way. Going out into the natural world just for a walk in the park or around your block and just feeling your feet on the grass or noticing the clouds in the sky. These can kind of remind one of this beauty that exists in the natural world. Other things that might do that, I think romantic love can start to open that. Romantic love's a little dicey. Somebody once said that when you find yourself in a deep, profound state of attraction to someone that you've just met, that most likely what's being attracted to that other person is your mutual wounding.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And people very often learn this as their relationship unfolds. It may be hot and heavy in the first couple weeks, and then pretty soon as some of the initial chemistry starts to taper off, then we're left with like a real assessment of the person that we're with. And it's not always the healthiest relationship. But we do get a glimpse of what it's like to feel touch and intimacy, to take another person who initially seems as separate and to start to deepen intimacy with them in a way that begins to blur that distinction between I and you. As I talked about earlier, the samadhi moment where the observer and the observed become one could say that in a romantic relationship, this is kind of what's happening. Two people are still retaining their distinct identities, but coming together in a way that's mutually respectful and supportive and affirming the general goodness of the other person. We get to experience our own genuine goodness by how another person can receive us with loving kindness and support and all the things that one might kind of seek in a partnering relationship. That being said, it doesn't mean that's the only way, because family is one way of connecting with that. The love that our parents, most of our parents, I would say, kind of exude towards us is, if you will, a kind of model of divine love. Parents don't tell us that our worth is contingent. Optimally, hopefully people don't experience this, that our worth is contingent on what we're doing, but they tend to stand by us even in our fallen moments, even when we've kind of transgressed against the world. It's said that there's no love like the love of a mother. And I think that can be a reminder of that intrinsic goodness. There are plenty of people who sadly lack a lot of these reminders. And for them, life seems to be a little bit more mired in that recognition of separation. I dare say the prisons are probably full of people like this who have kind of forgotten, or at least at the time, maybe they rediscovered in prison. I'm not sure about that, but people who have kind of forgotten that they are intimately connected with the world around them, and their actions have become, if you will, a sort of reflection of that forgetting. And they're more concerned with how can I get what I perceive as these sort of commodities of power or wealth or, I guess, dignity. These are things that we start to treat as commodities rather than just recognizing their abundant availability. So I would say that these are things that will kind of remind you. I would say anybody watching this video right now, if you want to know what a reminder is, ask yourself what makes you feel alive, what lights you up. Hopefully, if you can get a little bit more clear on what it is, it's not going to be mired in a specific thing like, I get lit up by, coming home and having a six-pack. Okay. What I would dare say lights a person up if they made an answer like that is the sense of kind of softness that maybe alcohol might afford them, but recognize that that softness should not be only available by having a few drinks, that there's a kind of easiness that is available, and that's probably what lights you up, that deep sense of things being okay.